just your guesstimate, how many different teaching methods or how many times have you had to change your teaching methods based on the next generation coming in?
Yeah, I mean, almost every semester I'm
Wow.
rethinking things. And I think one of the biggest changes before maybe when somebody went studied to be with further PhD and you became a scholar, and so you were, an expert in your field. Now you also have to be a technologist.
You'll see so quick people wanting the personal, people wanting the human,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
why completely overhauling business right now with AI won't
Yeah.
work because
Yeah.
people will so quickly be like,
Yeah.
that's not a real person.
I'm filling that gap of connection that I no longer feel anymore with this digital world. Or this, or as Isaac missed it, he missed his opportunity in this brave new world, right?
Do you think there are any real life viable lessons we can pull from these fiction stories and whatnot? And I guess what would you say is one that's really important? Or do you just go like, no, there's too much fiction in them? And welcome back to another amazing podcast. Today, I am very, very excited to talk about this. And I think as you get into the podcast, you're going to see a recurring theme that we love to talk about. But before I get into any more spoilers or anything, my name is Isaac Wienen. I'm the co-founder of what's now, you could say Steady, right, Kelly?
Yep, it's called Steady now. Yep. And my name is Kelly. Welcome back. It's been a while. All right.
Yeah, I know for them it's kind of a blip since it's on YouTube, but it's been a couple of weeks for us.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And from the previous podcasts, I'm Herman Wienen. I happen to be Isaac's father, but I'm also a director of business analytics for a global IT company. And if you've seen the previous podcast, what you'll probably also notice is there can only be one with a beard
Yeah.
out of our family. So I have taken my beard and I've passed it on to my son, Isaac.
I glued it on my face, Dad. And as y'all know, El Hermano has came back. It's not Herman anymore.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And today we have an amazing guest. She has had a huge impact on me and Kelly personally. She's been an amazing professor for us. And I'm very excited. And I really am. I was looking forward to this all semester long, even all last semester. I was like, I'm gonna ask her about this. I just gotta wait for the time is right. And I'm very excited that this is today. Like we're actually able to make this a reality. So I won't even introduce you. I'll let you introduce yourself. So yeah, take the floor. Tell them kind of who you are.
Well, first, thanks for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to it. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. My name is Dr. Lisa Kahl-Piasecki, and I am an associate professor at Heidelberg University. I've been teaching for over 20 years now, and I'm also very active in training and development. And that's kind of how I got my start in education. So the idea of the workforce having to be reskilled and upskilled and jobs going away and new jobs being created is just fascinating to me in what we need to do to help people so they can still, work and gain the skills that they need to do. So I'm also love to do research on these topics. So having a PhD, I am pretty active in research and have a research agenda that often looks at this intersection of technology in the workplace. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and you have had a lot of experience, especially with like South America, and I always found that super interesting. Can you go on that a little bit, like what you're doing there and like what you found in your research there?
Yeah, so I had, let's see, about 7 years ago, I had an opportunity to take a sabbatical actually to Mexico and worked at University of Monterrey Tech. They call it Tech for short. It has about 26 campuses in Mexico, one of the top universities in Mexico and actually in Latin America, and have been back to Mexico many times, formed a lot of good friendships there, and collaborated on research. And it was actually there through that experience when I saw all of the advancements they had in their university, everything they were doing to educate their students on the fourth industrial revolution that we're actually in, that I got really excited in a lot of topics. And so when I came back to the US, through those ideas and some of the conferences I went to and speakers I heard there, started developing a few courses that related to special topics on the fourth industrial revolution, and then it kind of took off from there. And so now I integrate a lot of the technology into the courses because I think it's important for students to know, and have the kind of the practice and the skills before they get into the workforce on using some of these technology tools. And so, yeah, Mexico is like a second home for me. I lived there for a while I was teaching and working. And kind of fun fact, my son was in high school at the time. He actually got to do a study abroad there. They had a high school on the campus of the university at some of their locations. So that was also a neat experience.
Oh wow. And I gotta ask, because I'm surprised I never asked, but are you fluent in Spanish or are you pretty close to it or
No, I'm not fluent in Spanish. I took French in high school, 3 years.
Yeah, I did
okay.
too.
So I'm not, but I can manage through some phrases and things. And actually, one of the things that the university did was they gave us private Spanish lessons while we were there. So I every time I go back, I try to keep it up and work on it. It is harder to learn a new language, I think, as you're older. And I should also mention I had a chance before that to live in Costa Rica, and the same thing, Spanish.
Mhm.
And so, I knew a little bit from there, but did not know as much as really I should have, or as maybe most people would expect that you would know. But you really can communicate even when you don't speak the same language. It's really interesting how that works out. So no, I'm not fluent.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, I have a feeling though when you do actually you're ingrained in that culture, I have a feeling you kind of learn a lot more than you do, and then you come back to Ohio and whatnot, and then you kind of lose it a little bit. But I'm sure every time you go back there, it kind of goes back. I'm sure you learn a lot more.
Yeah, that is actually exactly what happens. Then you go back and then it comes right back to you, and then you can pick up some new words. And today's actually Cinco de Mayo Day, which
Mm.
is celebrated mostly in the US, and so much in Mexico. So it's interesting. So I was thinking about tacos tonight.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, you actually you mentioned the topic and the theme of this episode or this podcast, and that is the fourth industrial revolution. So I just kind of want you to say, so when you say the fourth industrial revolution, what do you mean by that? What is that? Like, imagine someone hasn't heard of that before. How would you define it? And kind of, can you tell us why it's important to know about?
Yeah, so most people have education in the Industrial Revolution, which was really our first revolution, and then there was actually a two and a three, and the fourth Industrial Revolution really symbolizes what's happening now with the rapid automation and digitalization of everything. And so each industrial revolution throughout history usually revolves on significant changes in communication and transportation. And so, what's interesting, I think, about this revolution is it's going to, it is affecting everything. We'll see that as we get into AI a little bit more. So this one is really significant for that whole kind of rapid change that's taking place with these new tools. Although a lot of the tools were created or developed decades ago, but we're finding new uses, and the advancement of these tools is happening really rapidly. So, in the 80s, when personal computers entered the workplace, that was significant. Then we saw email about 30 years ago change the way people were communicating. And now there's just so many things that are changing the way we work and the way we live. It's really amazing. It's exciting, but it's scary too for a lot of people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a feeling if you go back 100 years and tell people they're gonna work from home, they're gonna go like, "What does that even mean? How could that even be
Yeah,
possible?"
yeah. Absolutely. Like how could we do that? And so really COVID accelerated that, but there were already people doing that and certain industries were probably more conducive to it. But it had been happening for a while and then it just was accelerated.
Hmm.
You mentioned two things on the Industrial Revolutions. You said really you see not technology, sorry, communication and transportation kind
Mhm.
of exploding. And when I think of Industrial Revolution, I don't think of those per se. I just think of technology, I guess you could say. So that's actually pretty interesting that communication has such a vital impact on our us as human beings. I didn't even that didn't even really occur to me on the transportation and communication.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, with the first industrial revolution, obviously, like the assembly line, right? Everybody knows about Ford and the Model T, but then the steam engines and the things that changed how people could get from one place to another. But now, if we think about it, with the technology, we have like our in-person identity, but then people have virtual identities. So that's changing. In one of the courses I teach, business communication, one of the things we spend time talking about, like a few weeks, is okay, so this is who you are in person, but what is your digital persona like? What's your avatar? What's your Bitmoji? What do you want to symbolize for yourself? And so we're kind of between these two worlds, which is kind of fascinating. I mean, here we are, all four of us together, I think probably in all different locations, maybe different cities, and yet we're communicating on this platform, which, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 years ago, sci-fi movies would talk about it, right? Or they could imagine it, but it wasn't really happening. And so now it's become pretty commonplace. And so in terms of education, we have to teach students, okay, how do you manage with these tools now? How do you communicate in person, but then how do you communicate with the digital tools?
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dad. Oh, my bad, Kelly. You go.
no, go ahead.
I was just
I'll
gonna ask my dad on his insight on I mean all the things you've seen. I mean, how weird is it? Like Dr. Piasecki just said, there is really two yous. There's a digital you and there's a
Yeah.
in-person you.
Yeah. Well, and that really changes, especially the dynamics. So my entire team is international. So I have some that report to me that are in Mexico. Most of my team is in India. My peers are in Morocco, the UK. I have a few people here, and each one of these is completely different because the culture
Mhm.
is completely different between the working culture of India and Mexico, for example. But then you also take, for example, I get to work with some phenomenal women that one of them is in Morocco. And that's a very different culture and society. And for her in the tech industry and so forth to establish that level of respect. And I always admonish her with all the praise possible because I also know that she has to fight for this image, regardless in a culture that tends to put females in a secondary kind of role. And then I also have the same thing that happens, let's say in India, in my India team, where that culture is so different there that it's very, very competitive. It's very straightforward. So you guys have worked with your India team, right? Your developers and so forth, and it's really being able to find and establish your truest self is what I have found to be the best way. So, for example, my truest way of managing my team, if they go to my social media, uh, and they see the social media or they see the non-work related persona that I have, whether it's doing music, whether it's in church or stuff like that, or how I run my meetings, what I have found is keeping the same persona and being true to myself and how I do these things has been the best way to manage it because I don't have any slips and falls like some of my counterparts. So they have this persona that they put on, out on social media. They'll put out on their profiles. They'll put in all of these places. But when you meet them in person and you turn on the camera, then you go, oh my, It's a completely different image. And in some cases, I hate to say it, but it has brought negative impact in my perception of how I deal with them, because I'm like, man, it's the social media lie? Is that right? Is that the right one? That everybody's putting on these masks.
Yeah.
And it's so prevalent now because, for example, we talked about AI. I've worked with a handful of these guys that are genius and brilliant, but they're not the best of communicators. Suddenly their emails are like top notch, top communication, top and I'm like, what? He he's never written me a complete sentence. He's never spelled everything right. The grammar. And I went, oh, we just put out Copilot.
Mm.
Microsoft Copilot, and so now he's taking on this. Well, it's kind of like his thoughts through that are refiltered in an image that really isn't him. And at some point, I was like, I've never been able to understand it, but
Yeah.
now it's completely changed because now he has a completely different digital image. Like you
Mhm.
were saying, that I was like, this is not the same guy I've worked with.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a lot of really interesting things. One, with the global teams and working with people from different cultures and how important that is today compared to, years ago. And then really the question of being authentic.
Mhm.
And I know I did a project a few times with students in the US and students in Mexico, and just trying to get them the skills to work with people from different cultures. And one of the things that I think it's always important to focus on is the personal things, right? The relationship. So what you mentioned about being authentic, because when we're thousands of miles apart and you have to work with someone, you want to build that trust with them, and the only way you can do that is by building a relationship. And so understanding them, the uniqueness of the person, and I think it's just really important. I think that's what makes life interesting too. I mean,
Yeah.
we all want to be the same. And so, yeah, using AI then all of a sudden to craft all of the emails or correspondence can be a helpful tool, but at the same time, could it erode a little bit of our uniqueness? So, one of
Yeah,
those unintended consequences.
that's a
Yeah.
fair point. Yeah. You brought up something that's near and dear to me and Kelly's, like literally the heart of our business model, and
Mhm.
that's trust and authenticity. And
Mm.
Kelly, I kind of want you to touch on like how important is it in today's world of, especially for businesses, obviously, is trust and authenticity.
Um, kind of put me on the spot. I don't know.
No, you're good.
But I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So I mean, I think you two, both you, Ms. Pasecki, and Isaac's dad, you guys touched upon a couple of things. I'll get to your question in a minute, Isaac, but
No, you're good.
as mentioned personas,
Mm.
and I have a follow-up question before I answer Isaac's question. Isaac, just remind me, when it comes to personas, and now with social media and having an online brand that people can make money from, right? And your online brand tends to be separate from your reality. And
Mhm.
with on the same lines as authenticity, you can be that same person, but with online brands, would you call those personas a brand? I know that from what you're talking about, well, with what Isaac's dad mentioned, it's more so in a professional setting. But would you say these personas that you guys mentioned are just online brands that people are taking up to take advantage of and
Mhm.
making income from and things like that?
Well, I know when so in training and development, when we kind of think about our audience persona, or I could do it in a classroom, like what's my typical student persona? We're talking about those characteristics of who we're going to be teaching or training. And so I think in the way that you're talking about it, Kelly, I think in a sense, a persona could be a brand. I'm kind of thinking about it maybe a little bit differently, but I think when we use personas in education and training, we're really trying to think about who are we going to be, working with.
Mhm.
And so I guess if someone's brand, if you thought that that's who they were, but they really weren't, you could get the whole thing wrong, right?
Yeah,
Because if they're not really that person, then your persona mapping, so to speak, wouldn't really be accurate.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
Mhm.
do that. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of that happens in people when they're building a brand and things like that. If they're not really their true self, but they find that building this brand in this way is leading to, more followers and being more successful, then that kind of can perpetuate that inauthenticity, I
Mhm.
suppose.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I mean, I think personas are important because I'm not the same Kelly in class as I am on a soccer field or with my friends
Mhm.
because it has to be appropriate. Who you are has to be appropriate to the occasion and where you're at, whether it's
Yeah.
professional or leisure and things like that. So I think it's important in that sense. But I mean, for businesses, authenticity can be a little for professionals and businesses, authenticity for me can be a little bit tricky
Mhm.
because being authentic really in a professional setting like the best example I've ever gotten with authenticity in a professional setting is if you're gonna look at like a doctor, for example. If this surgeon, for example, had a horrible day coming into work, they probably argue with their spouse, road rage, and they get into work and they're ready to operate. Their authentic self is very irritated and not in the right state of mind. So would you if you were the one on the operating table, would you want him to be authentic, him or her be authentic? And in that example, almost everybody said, no, I don't want him to be authentic. What you want the person to be is professional. Be a
Mhm.
professional. So
Mhm.
when you get into your profession, you have to be as professional as you can. And that's where my definition of authenticity might differ.
Mhm.
But for businesses, in our case, local businesses, authenticity is important. Now the whole definition changes where now
Mhm.
authenticity is important because people buy from people.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's a funny dynamic because you have small businesses that look up to corporations. They want to act like corporations, but corporations look to small businesses and they want the advantage that small businesses have
Mhm.
where they have the ability to be personable
Yeah.
and be able to connect with people on that level. But authenticity is important for
Mhm.
at least on a local business space. And like Isaac mentioned, it is really near and dear to our heart and the heart of our business because that's what we're trying to display is
Yeah.
the authentic business the heart of the business, and it's primarily through the authentic remarks that the business's customers are making, so the remarks they're making. And the idea behind that is if you have real people saying good things and having good remarks about a business, if you put that out into the world, it's going to attract more business.
Hmm.
So for us, it's important. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right path to go, or you think what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and if you don't mind it, do you care if I interject? Okay.
Anyone gets it,
So,
yeah.
so if strange enough, it is, and again, this is just from my experience because I've I used to do industrial engineering for Dell. When I would work for Dell for 18 plus years, I did engineering, I did development programming, did Kaizen change agent, trying to help for process improvement, all of these different things. And in those, I had always found originally, I was always striving to be a brand, be an image of something that I was not, right? And then I found my best power in just being authentic about people, right? So I find it interesting. You look at when everybody can build a brand, they can build a fake brand, they can build whatever they need, right? But look at all the biggest examples of those brands when the true person comes out and how those brands crumble, right? So let's say personas, online personas, you take, what's his name? The Liver King, right? You remember the Liver King? And
Yeah.
how he just totally crashed and burned because, for the longest time he said he was a natural, right? This was all natural. This is eating this. Turns out he was doing performance enhancing things for the longest time. Then he said he was going to go natural, and then he lost so much. He said, I can't be that. I have to be my authentic self. Well, that's different, right? And when it crumbled, it was literally a house of cards. You look at, and I was pulling it up because I remember seeing this interview. Jim Carrey, the actor, in 2017, he did an interview. He said, Jim Carrey that that you see, that's just a character that he plays. Very few people actually know the actual authentic Jim Carrey, right? And so then it makes you sit back and it makes you question everything you've ever seen him do off camera because he said, oh, well, the person that played the mask, that Jim Carrey, um, that's that's a guy playing Jim Carrey that's playing the mask, right? And
Mhm.
and so you don't know, but he's built a successful brand for himself. But you've seen how he's switched the brand over the last 20 years, right? From, in living color all the way to more serious roles and these things
Yeah.
throughout there. But nobody knows, and that's not a bad thing. But when he really goes off the deep end on some of the stuff he's done, it kind of makes his fans sit back and go, that's weird. So building your brand can have the easiest way to sustain it is to be true to yourself. And when you go
Mhm.
back to the operating table thing, the question is somebody is going off or whatever, get to the root. It's not the action of yelling or getting really intense. It's wait, why are they so intense about, I don't know, their lawn or something going on or whatever that's happening? That's because if they have that level of control or they want to make sure things are just perfect and right, and they tend to have anger outbursts, then I kind of want that guy to be the guy who's trying to save my life on the operating table, right? I want him because his authentic self means he is going to take this very serious, right? He is going to be in there and making sure that he is putting me back together as best as he possibly can. And he's going to keep
Yeah.
everyone around him accountable for that. So certain things are good, but you have to look past and try to find out what the true authenticity is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
You
think
have
so.
a
Yeah.
And don't do
Well,
performance enhancing drugs, Isaac. I'm pointing at you.
I will not.
yeah.
You
So
can eat
I
liver
don't
all
know
day.
I don't know if you had an answer or a thought, Miss Paiseki. If you do, I'll leave the floor to you for a second to.
I think I just add something very briefly. It's just kind of like, and we were always trained, previous generations, you separate your professional life from your personal life. You don't bring that into the workplace. And
Mhm.
so that was just kind of part of the training, I think. And so a lot of things are contextual, right? The environment that we're in. And so I think maybe some of that might have been eroded through social media in generations after, let's say, Gen X, where there's this blurring more of the personal professional. Before it was pretty clear you're this way at work and you don't bring that personal life to the workplace. So I
Mhm.
see where that's probably changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
that's that's a great call out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it like that, but now that you've mentioned that, I think that I mean social media has been the cause for so many changes in society and life in general. But now, as you mentioned, the main change agent right now going on is AI and automation and making things, and it's helping us do things with such efficiency
Mhm.
and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And before I continue, Isaac, did you want to? I don't know. I don't. I know you control this, so I don't want to. I don't want to go
No,
too
this
far.
is no, this is wherever it goes. I didn't have a direction,
Okay.
but
Okay.
before you go into I guess this part, I'll say I want to say one last thing on the authenticity because I have a dumb phrase that I probably annoy all the interns with, but it's literally as simple as, and I tell them all the time, if they trust you, and this is for business, is obviously, if they trust, they'll buy. If they don't, they won't. And that's kind of how simple the
Mm,
business world is. I mean, if you are like, you can use this in any case, from restaurants to, I don't know, clothing alterations to doctors. If you have a bad word of mouth about you and online reputation, do you think people are actually going to go there? Like, if you're trying to stay in a hotel for say, and all the reviews are all like, I got robbed here. Like, you're gonna go like, you know what? I probably don't want to stay at this hotel, you know? So
mm,
I think that is one of the most vital things. And Dr. Piasecki, you mentioned how, especially when y'all were growing up, it was very much keep your personal and business separate.
mm,
And I'm almost wanting to argue nowadays it's kind of flipped because, especially with like CSR and things like that,
mm,
businesses are now integrating themselves into people's personal lives and trying to like have their same personal values and reflect that in the business. And like, even outside of business, I mean, you see this continuous movement of like people who are authentic get a mass following. I mean, one, you guys might not have heard of him. He's like a lifting influencer. His name is Sam Solik, and he does no editing. It's just like hour and a half long videos of him driving his truck to the gym, talking about the most random things, working out and then ending it. Like, that's it. And this dude blew up because everyone's like, "Oh, he's so real, he's so authentic. There's no like editing and stuff." And it's just kind of funny. And then you also see this, I mean, whether you like him or not or anything like that, probably the most famous man in the world right now is Donald Trump, and a lot of his followers are amassed just because, at least how people perceive him, is he's the authentic guy, or at least he doesn't
yeah,
care. He's not a politician, right? He doesn't care. So like, and you see huge movements moving towards people who are that authentic. So I think, especially as the world travels and integrates into this new society of all digital, like we literally are our own people online,
yeah,
authenticity is kind of going to be a core value that is really, if you don't staple that in now, you're going to lose your business and trust and
mm,
stuff like that. So I don't know. I just think it's an extremely important aspect that businesses need to invest in, on top of, what would you say, evolving and adding in new components. They also need to keep the foundations of, you can trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Um, Isaac, the way you said that the man you mentioned with all the followers, because everyone likes him because he's so authentic and so
Yeah.
real, and that's interesting.
Yeah. The
Hmm.
Samsung. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a trend. That was a trend. I don't know what it looks like now, but that was a trend in paid advertising where before you needed like a whole setup. Like, if you think typical advertising on
mm,
TV and
Mhm.
even on social, it's usually very what do you call it? Like studio. It looks like they did it in the
Yeah.
studio. Everything was made to be a specific way, but for a little bit, UGC's user generated content was very popular, and it was what was turning that was returning the best ROI for most businesses. And what it
mm,
typically looked like is a business owner of a business just picking up their camera, their phone, and just recording and just talking about whatever they wanted to sell or whatever what it was about their business, and they would just use that for their advertising, and it would just do so well because I think the trend was we as people wanted to see the real person behind the business and not the business. So that became a trend, user
mm,
generated content.
So there was a really interesting article that came out back in the end of March. Stephen Kurtz from the New York Times, and he was basically writing about Gen X and the Gen X. The title is the Gen X Career Meltdown and
Mm,
the decline of the creative jobs. And so
mm,
for example, I wasn't always a teacher. I had a public relations major when I graduated from with my bachelor's degree and went on to work as a director of communications. And so had I stayed in that career, I would have been this part of this group that he was talking about. And he was talking about just that, like in the creative fields before, corporations and even small businesses had someone who basically pushed out the media, what they wanted people to know through press releases, through promotional brochures and newsletters. And so companies kind of controlled their narrative and their perception that they wanted people to have. So you had copywriters, you had photographers, you had PR people, and those jobs are going away. And AI is actually coming in and doing a lot of that work. And then, as you both mentioned, the change that's happening in society. And so his article I thought was just kind of fascinating because some of those jobs might not have been well paying, but they were interesting jobs. They were fun jobs. You got to go and meet people and do all of these things. And so those are going away. And for Gen X, it's when we're supposed to be at the prime of our earnings. And so our skills are becoming obsolete in that area. And so it was really a fascinating article because I think it shows, although it dealt mostly with the creative industry, um, it's where a lot of jobs are predicted to go with the automation and AI.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, that
very much so. AI is just becoming, um, I mean, I don't think this is new to anyone, but just so pivotal in efficiency in business, and a lot of businesses are starting to take advantage of it. But oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought.
you're
Uh-huh.
good.
Well,
It'll come back. It'll come back.
and I apologize. Um, Doctor, do I call you doctor or professor? I don't
You
know.
could call me, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to be formal and respectful and that kind of thing.
It's okay.
And you nailed it. That was a great article to bring up. Because yeah, I'm at the weird. I'm at the 76. I was born 76, and so I'm between a couple of generations here, but I feel like that is the decision that we all have to make because everything is now. I said I was a coder for the longest, developer for the longest time, and then just for no good reason, I dropped some of the projects I did before and into AI, and it just spits out the code that it took me weeks to write. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my, right? When I look at the benefit of, let's say, brainstorming with different diversities and so forth. Now I spend a lot of time on, different AI models and so forth. And then I say, okay, I need persona one, I need persona two, I need persona three. I need to create this training based off of people that were from these generations and go ahead and throw in someone with ADHD and how I can communicate with them. And then I go through like the different personality types, and I actually use multiple personality type of models, and then I throw that on top of the cultural thing I mentioned for, okay, now they're in Mexico or they're in India and they're a female, and so they're from this region. I need background and so forth, and before I know it, within an hour, I have everything I need that would have taken weeks and weeks of meetings of one face to face. And so now I'm starting to, you really made me think between your comment on the influencer and so forth. Maybe that's one of the reasons it's moving to this is because people want to have a real authentic interaction with someone. And maybe that's like one of those substitutes of that influencer, of man, I feel like I'm really part of someone's life, right? It's the same way.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm filling that gap of connection that I no longer feel anymore with this digital world. Or this, or as Isaac missed it, he missed his opportunity in this brave new world, right?
Oh, I know. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah, and I think I mean, you see it in the cultural shift. I forget the exact percentages, but and Dr. Piasecki covered this as well about the news
Mhm.
and the trust in the like established news outlets. So like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, like all of those,
Yeah.
it's dropping significantly. People are trusting it a lot less. But something that is spiking a ton is like podcasts and like these long form these
Mhm.
podcasts, and then even independent like YouTubers that who are journalists and stuff, and those are spiking. And I personally think it's this kind of lashing out of, because when technology was first indoctrinated on us, pretty much the ads that worked were these flashy things because it's so new to people. You're like, whoa, what is this? I can get this for just $5. Boom. You know what I mean? Like, and then they had all this flashiness. And now that we've been bombarded with this constant, like, we can kind of understand, oh, now we're just being manipulated in a way. It's like, you're manipulating me. I'm not buying from you.
Yeah.
And now it's
Yeah.
just lashing out at, no, I want authenticity. If I think you're a real like you're real and I connect with that, I'm gonna buy from you and I'm gonna be loyal to you. And you can take that in business terms, you can take that in whatever terms you want. But it is crazy that I saw, because like the news outlets they're extremely low. I think the number I want to say is like 31% or maybe lower. I could be false, but I know is extremely low percentage of people are actually getting their news and trusting their news from these news outlets.
Yeah.
But compared to like even social media, which is probably not the best place either to get your news, but like social media, but podcasts and long form stuff like this, it's spiking. So I think that's another cultural factor that you can see that's pointing in this direction of authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the Pew Research Center every year surveys the Americans, and what social media platforms they're on, and they look at all different kinds of demographics and break it down by education. And for a while, it was dipping, like people were leaving social media platforms. But
Mhm.
there was an article last week I had shared in one of my classes on this influencer on Instagram that has amassed like 380,000 followers, and she's a Spanish musician, and she's getting sponsorships and things from companies, or however they were working it. Well, she's not real. It's just, and
Wow.
she doesn't exist. She was an AI, generated image, and
Hmm.
so she
Wow.
doesn't exist. And
Wow.
and so, I think that's what we're going to see, in some aspect, people will question, is this really real?
Oh
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
It's gonna so
Uh,
quickly get to that point where
yeah,
you can't really tell. I not your specific example, but there was an ad going on a while ago where like this guy is sitting is like, hey, which ad do you think is AI generated? And he says, okay, it's both
yes,
with AI generated. And it turns out he was AI generated. And it's like he looks like a real dude. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh
yeah,
wow. I mean, the first time I saw it, I was like, like that's cool. But then like as you see it, like but that speaks to what Isaac was talking about. When it comes with time, people
mhm,
just get so used to things. So at the beginning, I think that it will be um a point for people to want to understand if this is a real person or not. But as time goes on, we'll be so well equipped eventually, I think, to to gauge if it's real or not. Because I mean, I'll say even maybe 20 years ago, people couldn't tell if an email came from you know what I'm saying, if the email was actually personalized or not. But now if I go into my email feed, I can tell what's an ad and what's not an ad, or what came from a real person and what didn't come from a real person, just from the format and what's in the content, right? And how it's written.
mm.
Um, I think I think when it comes to um uh, all these different avenues, from people not engaging with the news anymore, and podcasts and everything getting more and more popular. I think what technology has done is given people a voice, right? And now that individually everyone can have their own individual voice, they now understand that they can just voice their own wants and their own desires. And it might come with the personalization aspect too. I think Isaac's dad mentioned it, where you can personalize the same task to three different individuals from three different backgrounds, cultures, gender, and people respond to that better because it just feels so thoughtful. And the ability to put that together with such speed, you couldn't do that without AI. At least not at the same. Well, you can. It'll just take you forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one way it's going to revolutionize education, or it's already going to start to have some impact. We're kind of talking about adaptive learning, where the use of artificial intelligence can respond to, basically a learner, a student, or an employee. And if they're not getting a concept or whatever it is that you want them to know or be able to do, then it can adapt to that individual person very quickly and give rapid feedback like, okay, no, you didn't get this right. Let me reword this question and see if you understand it now. And so I think it's going to have a lot of impact in that way. But I still think it learning is so social and human that, in that phrase, I think Isaac said people buy from people, or Kelly, you said it. I still think there's going to be the need for a human to, basically curate the learning
Mm.
experience, but also utilize the AI tools to adapt to different learners' needs, their maybe comfort in a subject or content, and kind of again curate these kinds of educational experiences based on the individual. That you could do that very rapidly. A professor or even a teacher in a K through 12 system, you can't do that with a class size of 30, 35 students, right?
Mhm.
So I think that'll be kind of a nice advance or integration of AI into education.
Mm.
Oh, a
Yeah.
1000%. And a little bit in business too. I know that from my personal experience in my job now and whatnot, but generative AI, well, just AI in general, being able to use AI, your personal LLM, so not like a
Mm.
public one like a chat GPT, but one that is personally made for your business or whatever your software that you're using that can learn your business's everything, like from finance to the people and whatever you need to learn. And then based on all that information, it can now, in terms of business intelligence, give you just strategic things you can do to either optimize your revenue or
Mm.
whatever. 'Cause AI can just go through so many different sequences within seconds, where it can say, from your past data, we know that if, let's say it's I don't know, let's say it's a dentist or something, right? If you want to get rid of this thing in your inventory, sell it with this, because we, you know what I'm saying? So like there's so much that generative AI can do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if the power that it gives, at least in the business world, also with education. But I
Mm.
mean, it's exciting. But then you did mention one factor, which is kind of funny, because as generative AI, or I gotta stop saying that, as AI makes it so easy and simple to get things done, and for learning to be more efficient, and for businesses to make better decisions, you'll see so quick people wanting the personal, people wanting the human,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
why completely overhauling business right now with AI won't
Yeah.
work, because
Yeah.
people will so quickly be like,
Yeah.
that's not a real person. And then now the business that's more focused on the personalized and being human is gonna win the business. So you got to have a balance, and you can't just, at the moment, can't fully go to one side or the other.
Yeah, I just read a study literally today from the Wharton School of Business, and they found, and again, still in early stages, so we don't know, but they compared people who were like taught normally by teachers versus people who were taught completely by generative AI for these tests. And they find the ones who were completely reliant on this AI, even though it was using the personalizations and whatnot, they did worse. Like on average, they did worse than people who were still taught by humans. So and again, I don't know all the extraneous factors. Like I don't know what AI they were using, how good it was. It's still in new phases, obviously. I know AI is going to get better and stuff like that. But I just thought it was interesting that they even found, AI is good, but when you're completely relying on it, you're not learning as well as you are from an actual
Yeah.
living human being.
Well,
Well,
this,
oh,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, nope, 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 nope.
Well,
You-
it just reminded me of there's a few studies that talk about what would be called techno stress,
Mhm.
and that when they look at people who work on computers a lot, for their job, and they can experience so much stress from the technology that sometimes the technology isn't really a benefit because of the harm it's causing. And
Mhm.
and I don't know if there would be a correlation like in what you were describing, Isaac, with that study, but um, you know, it's some people can enjoy being on a computer like all day long, 7 days a week, and a lot of other people can't. They
Yeah.
want that, that human and the variety. And there's a really good model, like the job characteristics model that's used in HR that talks about, job satisfaction, and it becomes higher when you have autonomy and variety in your workday instead of doing, the same thing over and over. So maybe it's a little bit of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my whole life is computers, and you can see I have, I still got three. I have three screens over here. I have one over here, and then I have this one I'm looking. My whole surrounding here in a couple of systems, and I totally agree with that. Uh, I still trying to figure. Is it Dr. Pasecki? Pasek?
Piasecki, that's really
Piasecki.
good. It's a tough one to say.
Piasecki. Okay, Dr. Piasecki. And I just really understand that the stress and that, like for me, this is a tool, right? And a tool has, so strange enough, even as friendly or as customizable as the AI is, it'll cater to everything I need. Um, I have to remember it's a machine and it's a tool. And so, what does this tool, is it going to give me exactly what I'm, is it going to give me the extra edge to work through the noise of, whether it's the noise of work, whether it's the tone of the messages I receive, whether it's to digest the world around me in the tone. Um, it's funny because I'm going to post this here. I don't know if it'll show up in the video itself. This is this is really ridiculous, guys. I apologize. I spent a while writing this. Okay, so I'm going to put it in the chat.
Uh-oh.
You're going to laugh. It may not even send. Oh yeah, because hang on, I got to do it in two parts.
Oh gosh.
Oh gosh, yeah. Um, crud. Okay, well, here, let me do this. I'll cut that. Cut that. Will this go through? There we go. There's the first half of it.
Hmm.
Okay. And I'll explain what this is exactly. Oh man, I have to break it into three. That's really sad. Cut. Okay. That'll go in this. This is for you to read later and enjoy. So this is something I put together because and I'll just give you the high points of it. But this is my news biased workflow. Okay. The reason I did this is because I wanted to work through all the manipulative things that occur in news cycles and all of this. So the first part, which made me very happy, because notice I put very contradictive type of news sources in here. But one of them I go to every day anyway is the Pew Research. So when
Oh,
when you said that, I was like, oh, she's so awesome.
Yeah.
I love that someone knows about that.
I do like if I can find it, I do put them in papers as much as I can for school.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. And what I had did for the longest time is I just went and I was trying to find, I said, I need the least biased type of news sources, right? But you notice in there, and get to the end, then you start sticking some really biased items in there, right? But that's okay because I believe that if you want to know, like I need, for me, when I do my personal improvement at work and so forth, I go to the person who doesn't like me because they're the ones who are going to nitpick me and they're going to say all these little opportunities I have to improve. right? So I don't mind that critique. So I do look at that, but not take it as face value, right? I realize there's certain tones, there's certain agendas that different groups are pushing, but I go through all of these different ones and then I compare all of these news titles and I even rate it. I said, show me the logical fallacies, show me the fact checking, use, what was this? Oh yeah, the factual meter where it actually will go out and then do background checks on the statements that they do. And I do this to parse through my news because I know out there people are working their hardest and AI is working its hardest to manipulate me for whatever purpose, right? Not, and again, it's a machine. So there are people that want to push their own agendas. There are people that want to push their own narrative, their own spin on the story. But at the end of the day, I just want the facts out of all of this from both sides and in the middle. And I also want to see what the rest of the world is looking at these same items, right? And what I've discovered in a couple of these things is that so I started really following, and I don't have it in this, but I started following a lot of Canadian news. I started following, and we were talking about news outlets, we were talking social media, and I started following these other countries as well. And I started realizing we all have something very much in common with the concerns and the politics and the progressive sides or the conservative sides and all of these things. And it suddenly gave me a new understanding that there's a baseline of manipulative uh, tactics, right, that are used across the world, and being able to filter these out so I can find out whether someone's being authentic to me in that communication, right? And I found that, so I've been playing with this for months now, tweaking these prompts and tweaking these things like a nerd. Anyway, it's been really amazing to do that. And what I've found is going through, I remember many years ago, like the fourth turning, I had studied all of this. I was like, wow, this is great. And then I went to different things throughout my career, and I would find out personality types. But then I like two or three and even four different personality type models. And then I would go through and I'd say, man, I really like let's say I also like these marketing platforms, or I really like these different keynote speakers in their management style and things like that. And then I started putting in their information, and I was able to finally hone in and use this tool to better understand how I've been influenced my entire life. And I think along the same lines, this same tool, this same approach is help us understand what's coming at us, right? Where people are trying to mislead us. And number two is that we need to understand our own biases. Wait, the bias that we personally have. And then even in here, one of the things I have is tell me the emotional manipulation that is being used in this, right? And find political biases, find factual accuracy, logical fallacies, and all of these. And as you study all of these things, and you just can't always put them together, now it's like everything I want to holistically compile my final solution is here in this tool. And it has the capacity to do that. And at the same time, it's like raises the red flags in me, because I look and I go, oh my gosh, I argued this political point, and guess what? That's a logical fallacy of straw man, right? And I was like, oh no, I've been arguing this fallacy forever. And anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you because I found that very interesting to go along with what you were talking about.
I,
earlier.
I love this activity, like for a classroom exercise. This is really good. This isn't. I really love it. But and I think that's really what's going to be important in the role of education and universities too, with kind of mitigating this AI is really teaching students how to be responsible users of it and determine what's real, the accuracy. So based on what the algorithms are funneling them, and then looking at, just like you said, with this, the comparing the news items, side by side, and really teaching students how to be critical readers of the content is going to be really important. So I think
Mm,
really I'm talking about maybe digital literacy skills are really going to be so critical for students today.
Dad, you just gave the next semester a new homework
I was
assignment.
I was just about to say
I really
that.
like this. Yeah, this is
That's funny.
he's going through this going, well, yeah, but
like I love it.
yeah, thanks. It been one, but again, it's not something I was doing a one stop shop. It took me time to build and pull from all of my previous experiences, things I've read, articles,
Mhm.
checkpoints saying, "Ooh, I better write and remember that," and then suddenly put it together in the cohesive type of thing. It's going to change. I'm going to have other news groups and outlets that I'll add to it, but over time. I like what you said. What was the term you said? The
Oh,
uh,
digital literacy.
digital literacy. Okay.
Yeah, that is actually, I didn't think about it, but that is something you're gonna have.
Yeah.
I think it would be essential for students to learn that. I
Yeah.
know it's oddly a skill I'm having to do for my uh I have a remote job where I prompt and I help annotate AI. And my
Mhm.
favorite one is fact checking and doing like factuality checks. And it is fun. It is fun, but you do realize um, it really teaches you how to research correctly
Yeah.
and not to, because it's easy to just trust that AI, whatever AI says, yeah, it's true. It's got all the information in the world and it can get it like that. How is it going to be wrong? But then you realize there is a lot of little almost like comprehensive things that it says that just don't make sense. Like its train of thought is just a little off, and you're like, well, that's a mistake. How did you miss that? And it's really interesting to see the discrepancies between its thoughts and ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the funniest things are when like a chat GPT or like a perplexity or something, they make like an obvious mistake and you tell it that and it goes, oh my bad, yeah, I fixed it. I'm like, what? What are you talking? You should have known that. Like, what do you mean one plus
Yeah,
one? Like he's like, oh my bad, I fixed it. But
yeah.
but I think your dad put it best, which is it's a tool. And I think early on, especially when Chat GPT came out, and I was probably one of the first like early adopters. I used it pretty early on, even in school. But I quickly learned that and I don't say that like to cheat on myself, but rather I'm saying I quickly learned that it made a lot of mistakes. Meaning, if you just put something into it and you said spit something out for me, and you take that at face value, I quickly realized that it's not all correct.
Yeah.
So I quickly shifted from using it as a way to cheat my way through school. Rather, it can be a thought partner with me.
Yeah.
Oh
Mhm.
Now,
yeah.
there's some hours that I can save in research that I don't have to go do, but I still have to do the fact checking, but I don't have to go
Yeah.
find it now, right? Might have to
Yeah.
do it, but it's going to give me a good starting point, which it did a lot in my last semester, which it gave me a lot of good starting positions. Whereas before, I have to go figure out that starting position. But
Oh
like you
yeah.
mentioned, it's just a tool, and if you don't know how to use it, then you're still, even with AI, you're still not going to be as effective as if you didn't have it, right? So learning how to use it is very important.
We're
Yeah, and it's a skill that employers are looking for in today's college graduates, so that they really want people who know how, have specific AI skills,
Yeah.
whether it's generative AI or something else. It is an emerging, top skill by
Mm.
employers. So it's important. And I think, we're just kind of in educate, we're just not, because it came out in 2022, generative AI.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
20.
so we're having these conversations, or was it 23?
It was late 22, early 23.
Yeah.
Okay. So, these conversations, because the educators, we want our students to learn and develop that critical thinking, but we also recognize it is an important tool that they're going to need to know how to use in the workplace. And
Mhm.
so it's just these conversations, rethinking, okay, what
Yeah.
should these assignments look like? And
Yeah.
how can we maybe integrate generative AI into this assignment in some way? So it's a process.
Yeah.
Mm.
We're
100%. 100%. Learning, I know early on it was a scare for probably teachers because it
Hmm.
was a way for us to cut corners, but it was so easy to catch
Mm.
because a lot of well, maybe not now, but like early on, I know personally a lot of people that used to just literally put a prompt in. Like, if you gave an assignment that had like a prompt about what to do, they would literally just put that prompt in, tell it how long it needed to be, take that and paste it. And
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I had some students who submitted assignments based on this prompt, and it didn't make any sense. Like they didn't actually then read what they uploaded
exactly.
yeah.
into the Dropbox. I'm like, this
Yeah.
didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you have that, it shows, and you mentioned it. It's an important skill to learn because now, especially now that employers are actually looking for that skill, it's important to learn it. And I think um when Turn-In had all those when Turn-In the software you guys used to check everything was inserting all those things to check for plagiarism and stuff. When that was starting to roll out, I was listening to podcasts at the time, and somebody once mentioned that teachers, and this is not my words, right? It wasn't bash, it was like teachers are so quick to say no AI, but you need to teach it so that at least students know what a good pay. And this was talking about like English writing and stuff. So,
Mm.
and
Mm.
the point the person was trying to make is at least use it so you can teach students what good writing looks like and what bad writing looks like. Because
Yeah.
what AI tends to do is write really poorly and just do
Yeah.
things that don't make sense. So like you mentioned, it's important to find a middle ground on how do we teach this, but also how do we make it so that they're not so over
Mm.
reliant on it, which is a middle ground that's really difficult to
Yeah.
bridge around. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I don't know that anyone has a good answer on that yet. Like
Yeah.
it's still
It's
these
tough.
Yeah.
conversations,
Yeah.
discussions, and we're
Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
thinking
it's
about
literally 3 years old. It's a 3-year-old baby, pretty much,
it.
or
Right.
moving on. So, yeah, and we're dancing around this topic of education, which is pretty much the last one I wanted to get into. And I had some just stats and facts I was going to read out, and then I have a question. But I do want to say one funny story about that, Kelly, is uh, uh, Dr. Piasecki, you know Tracy Stark, right? Yeah. So one of my other undergrad majors was psychology. So I had her and she was telling us a story about when like it first came out. Someone like she did they did the prompts, Kelly, they copy and pasted pretty much exactly what she wanted. And then whatever the response gave out, they just copied it and pasted it directly and submitted it as a paper. But they gave so little effort into that literally, so you know how GPT or whatever you use, it always says please make sure that you fact check this. It's not always correct or something like that, or let me know how I can help you out. Like they pasted that part in there as well.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "What? Like you can't even do that right? Come on." But no, I just thought that was funny, and because that'll be forever ingrained. I'm like, it
Yeah.
is kind
Yeah.
of sad that you can't even put effort into anything that you're just gonna do whatever. But that kind of leads into like this next portion of like education and stuff. So I'll read out these things. So the AI in education market and specifically, and this was done by like a big data corporation. That literally their name is Big Data, but it says it's projected to grow. So right now they did this in 2024. It was about 5.18 billion dollars. And in 10 years, by 2034, it's supposed to be $112.3 billion. So I don't know exactly how many times that is, but that's at least 20 plus times, right? The market growth. In just 10 years, in education alone, AI is supposed to grow. Now you also have 40% of education leaders use AI daily, 68% of educators have used it once, and that 62% of students use it once. That was from
Wow.
Microsoft. And I got just three more. ChatGPT, they did another thing. This is from the New York Times. They found that it's getting so good that only about 1 in 20 responses are getting caught by teachers. Especially now that there's like AI humanizers and things like that.
Wow.
And then Forbes, they ran a survey and 89% of students admitted to using AI on their homework. So Kelly, at least you're in the majority. You're not. So, so 89% of
Yeah.
students use it on their homework. And then this was an article I just read right before this, and they found that students who become overly reliant on this AI, so especially the COVID classes and all of that,
Oh,
they
yeah.
find that this leads to a decline in critical thinking and problem solving skills, especially with this excessive use of AI. And I mean, as you can imagine and correlate, it makes sense. If you're not even trying to exercise the muscle of thinking and you're
Mhm.
just like, whatever, copy paste, you're not going to gain that area. And then I know I just kind of spouted out a ton, but I mean, I guess how do you see AI personally just reshaping education for the students and the educators?
Yeah.
I know it's a big question, so
That is a big question. Well, I do think, we're kind of at this interesting point, right? Because I would say it's still new. And so we're just not quite sure. We know students need to know how to use it, but we have to rethink assignments because we do want students to develop that critical thinking. So
Mhm.
it's going to be coming up with some kind of, solution to use it as a tool, but also establish critical thinking. And I don't know what that's going to be. I
yeah,
don't know what that's will look like. I struggle with it. I'm
yeah,
always rethinking my assignments and, in leading change and innovation in the MBA class, using it as a tool for ideation and things like that can be really valuable. But what kind of conclusion can you come to in ideas when you're talking with your team first, maybe, and then maybe use it as a tool secondary. I don't know.
it is hard. Yeah,
But I do think, it is disrupting education. It's going to be a tool that's going to change a lot of processes, even at the like student services administrative level, not even just in the classroom, because it can do things so much quicker. And that automation trend that we're going to. And again, there's mixed projections on this. The jobs that are going to be kind of eliminated because they can be highly automated, but then there should be new jobs that are replaced. So I don't know. I
yeah.
don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you I feel like it is having significant impact on
Yeah.
education.
And then that leads me kind of to the second question from that is, and the more I think about it, I'm like, I can definitely see this being a possibility, but do you, can you see this, or do you believe that even a traditional like 4-year degree is eventually just going to become obsolete? Or do you think it's just going to evolve in a completely different way? Like, what do you, because I mean, eventually it's going to be like, AI is going to answer everything. Like it's probably going to get good enough. People are just going to, you can never tell if it's actually a student or AI. So I'm just curious, do you think these 4-year degrees are still going to be important, like especially in the future as it keeps growing, or I know that these are kind of like crazy questions, but it's just something to think I'm thinking about.
Yeah, students are already, or college age students, right, are questioning the value right now of college and there's a lot of micro credentials and certifications that they can get, and employers are changing, their qualifications from requiring a college degree to not doing that. And so I think universities will change. I don't know how significantly. I mean, we're already seeing, declining college age students, right? The demographics have changed in the United States, so there's not as many of them. I almost see this as like a societal question,
Yeah.
it becomes really like in the some of the classic books we talked about in
Yeah.
science fiction. So just because we can do all these things, what does that mean for humanity?
Yeah.
What will we become?
Yeah.
And I still obviously as an educator really believe in education and its transformative impact it can have on students and being in the classroom and discussing ideas and things like that. But it's changing. People like the flexibility of, online learning. And so I don't know, that's a really, really big question.
And I honest because I can see both sides for sure. Like at some point, like is a marketing degree per se gonna even be a thing versus no, you should probably learn literally analyzing AI versus doing like the marketing classes. Like I know Katani, he would teach like some social media classes. Well, like how important is that going to be when AI is, I mean, it's already coming out with things that look so real, people can't even really tell, and it's only going to get better. How important is it going to be that you can draw these things or think of these things when you can type it in a prompt and then do other tasks? So it's just an interesting route and rabbit hole you can go down for sure. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, but it's definitely something that's just kind of
Yeah.
that dystopian future.
Oh yeah, just
Yeah.
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 we
Um,
could talk
I
about
think
that for hours.
yeah.
That
yeah.
now Isaac and Kelly. Oh,
Uh-huh.
sorry, Kelly. I think you were going to ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was gonna say,
Mhm.
I was gonna say, I think education is going to be around. I
Mhm.
don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think that Ms. Pasek is very correct in saying that it might change, but it's going to be around because even if AI can teach you,
Mhm.
and you have the flexibility to learn on your own time, you still have to learn it. The skill
Yeah.
aspect is still part of it.
100%.
Just because you have the information doesn't mean you just know it, right? And just because you can generate a bunch of advertising doesn't mean you're a good marketer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think me and you have learned that very, very well. Whereas, like, um, I think early on we were lied to from what we've seen, and we thought it was simple just because we knew a little bit. And then we start doing it, and we find out there's actually some skill to this, right? And
Yeah.
it takes time to learn. And where we thought early 2024 it'd take us a year, we're still going. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know what I'm saying? There's a skill portion to it that you need to learn that education and educators um learn the skills and help, and they're there in person to help you navigate and things like that I don't think AI can do. AI can just give you a lot of information, but you also need to learn how to learn it.
Mm.
And if you're a go-getter, I would say, if you know how to teach yourself, then I think it'd be an asset to you. But I don't think a lot of people are good at self-teaching. You always need someone who's done it, who's been there to be like, hey, this is how we do this,
Yeah.
right?
And that's very true. That even within online education, that motivational level can really be impacted by having someone kind of guide you along the way.
100%, 100%, because learning something by yourself is really difficult. Like I think it's been difficult to learn marketing so far. I mean, but if I had someone who's done it and who's tried and true and they've been successful to be like, all right, okay, this is how we do this. We go this way, we do this, we don't do that. I think the success would come a little faster, but AI isn't the same as a human. So I think
Right.
education would be around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think being able, so we started a lot of this, the beginning of the podcast, talking about authenticity, right? And I believe that's probably a new skill that the educators are going to develop some kind of vehicle to teach authenticity in media, in content, in what they're actually learning. So we said at some point, who knows, in the next few years, it will be indistinguishable between the AI generated content and all of these other things, right? And we have to be able to find that authenticity.
Mm.
Us Xers, boomers and Xers, we got our own challenges because we have to suddenly adapt to this. I already have to deal with some of my generation and older that are already being, fooled by fake content, that's
Mm,
out there.
mm,
Um, and I think there's a learning curve for all of us
Mhm.
because and Dr. You've been teaching for 20 years, right? So
Mhm.
you've already seen an insane amount of change in the education
Yes.
system. And over that year, I mean, just your guesstimate, how many different teaching methods or how many times have you had to change your teaching methods based on the next generation coming in?
Yeah, I mean, almost every semester I'm
Wow.
rethinking things. And I think one of the biggest changes before maybe when somebody went studied to be with for their PhD and you became a scholar, and so you were, an expert in your field. Now you also have to be a technologist. You
Mm,
really have to understand how these platforms work, like the learning management systems and building those grade books and the technology behind and the systems. And so I do want to put a plug in for Gen X. I think one of the advantages we have right now is we understand both the analog system and the digital system. So we might have to learn the new systems, but we understand how both work, which could be advantage to the Gen Zs coming in the workplace because we can help mentor them in that way, and then they can reverse mentor us in some of the other tools.
mm,
But yeah, it's changed drastically because, when I first started teaching, everyone turned things in on paper, and now
yep,
I
Yeah.
rarely touch paper.
When was the
yeah.
last time you seen something in cursive being turned in?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Wait,
don't.
was it you that made us do a final? We had to write it out.
Yes, yes, that was me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kelly
Yeah.
remembers that one.
You know
Everyone.
what though? I do that, and what I have found by having students just have like a blue book or write out that the responses seem to be much better than having it typed on a computer. And my only theory, and again, not supported, is that it's helping you focus because
Yeah.
when students bring in a laptop, they'll have 20 windows up and notifications coming in, but just writing it down you just seem to be really focused. Like I really get good responses from students.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'll just say, I don't think, I know everyone walked out of that room, their wrist was hurting because we don't write as much as
Because
we
you
Yeah, I was gonna
use
used
a
say.
to.
new muscle, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, my hand cramp. I had to write one in history, and my this little muscle right here was permanently just like that the rest of the day. It was so bad.
I vividly have a memory of like mid writing because I was writing in cursive. I had to stop because my fingers wouldn't move because I hadn't done it in so long. It was stuck. I had to like stretch it out, and I was like, oh,
That's
dude, because
funny.
it's time too, so you have to get it done. So
Oh man. Well, I have one last thing, and then because we took a lot of your time, and I appreciate you talking. Um, I have one last thing, and this is just kind of for fun. So we talked a little bit about it in the beginning, and I know in the email you had said how you're a huge fan of the dystopian and like that whole area. So my question is like, so you're a fan of things like the Black Mirror, Brave New World, and Severance, and I know there's probably a list, and you said you can talk about it for hours. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a ton, but I guess your answer is going to be yes, but do you think there are any real life viable lessons we can pull from these fiction stories and whatnot? And I guess what would you say is one that's really important? Or do you just go like, no, they're too much fiction in them?
No, I don't think they're too much fiction. I think they're mirroring what's happening. Is I look at Black Mirror kind of if you probably don't know the old Twilight Zones.
Oh, my dad made me watch them actually. So
Okay, so it's like the modern day Twilight Zone, and I find that it really makes you think, because each episode is standalone. And one of the most, I guess, favorite episodes, and I used to show it in certain classes, and Kelly, maybe in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, was season three, Nosedive, where people were going around and you could see what an individual's rating was by holding up their smartphone. And it affected everything. It affected the apartment they could rent, the job they could have, if they got served like buying coffee. And I thought that was real, and this was one of the early ones from season three. And so um, No, I think, if we can think about these things that can happen, and it really does make you think about, okay, these unintended consequences of the technology. And so how are we going to, teach people to use these things responsibly?
Wow, man, you just brought that up. I'm sorry, I gotta do because I read an article. Oh, it is what you're talking about because you've heard of the China's social credit system, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's what oh man,
Yeah,
wait a minute, it's not the future. It's not. It exists in this
yeah.
world. Yeah.
So it was like a rating system, like a 5-star rating system, or like how was it? What was the rating system there?
Sure. Like, so if someone wasn't nice to you in the workplace, you could just rate them right there and give them
Oh
one. And
man.
so it's
That
called Nosedive, season 3, Black
Interesting.
Mirror.
I
It's
gotta watch
really
it. I
good
didn't
one.
know. I've heard about Black Mirror. I didn't know what it was about, though, to be fair.
Mm.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
could get bad.
season 7 just came out a few weeks ago.
All right,
So
everybody watching this, go watch
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
Mirror.
And
dark
if you
side of technology.
Yeah.
yeah, and if you don't know where it is right now, just look up the SCS, the China Social Credit System, and do some
Mhm.
research on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that.
Uh,
I feel like it's gonna be crazy.
so I got a question. I've got to ask Dr. Piasecki on this one. Okay, Brave New World. I have to preface this because I don't think it's mandatory reading anymore
I don't think so.
for most of y'all.
No.
Okay. So, in this dystopian future, one of the underlying things is a drug called Soma, SOMA, right?
Mhm.
And they use it for everything. I mean, everybody is just continuously given this. It mellows them out, keeps them docile. So for example, there was a riot that was going on. People were getting angry and violent and stuff, and they spray the authorities spray Soma over the whole crowd, and then they're all like crying and hugging and loving on each other and all of this, and
Wow.
and it was how they controlled society. So
Oh, yes.
yeah, so this is your question, or this is a question to you, doctor, is what is your personal take on today's Soma that is forced
Mm.
on us? There's no
Oh,
wrong question, wrong answer. But I really want to get your take on it because, like I said, this was an influential book on me when
yeah.
I read it, and I was like, nobody else knows about it. So,
Yeah. And I read it a few years ago actually, and I had a conversation with a few of my friends about it who had also read it, and like, what is today's Soma?
Oh,
So I could say that when we had this conversation, the consensus was almost like the smartphones and devices and social media.
wow,
It's a
yeah,
way of, controlling and maybe influencing our thoughts. So that was kind of our discussion about it, is that, at least at that time. So this was a few years ago. I don't know,
wow.
what do you think it is?
Well, I'm kind of leaning towards not only that, but social media, especially specifically, not just smartphone, but the social media, because you see how kids swipe,
Yes,
and you
right.
and you see the clinical disorders that are now starting to show up, that where kids are swiping in their sleep,
Mhm.
and that's how they dream, and they just it's a way to keep the masses docile, right? And anyone who can break away from that seems to have that independence. And so let me pull up one of the things, because I'm sorry, I had more questions around Brave New World than I did about the education. So that was it's
I think
just
it's the
nice to
first time
find
you
someone who
tap
read
your
it.
phone right now.
Yeah. Oh, hey, wait. Just so you know, Kelly and Isaac, this is your assignment. You have to read Brave New World, okay? And you have to have
Bro,
a handwritten report.
that's
Turn
gonna be my
it
summer. That's my summer assignment I gotta do.
Yeah,
You really should read it. It's a
yeah.
very good book.
And to Dr. Piaseki's point, it was written 100 years ago,
Mhm.
and it is scary how it's actually come to true. It's kind of like 1984. It's like, okay, but one of the things I had pulled is, um, So overall, the motto was what was community, identity, and stability,
Mm.
right? And this is how the new global government world state would manage everything. And you think, wow, that's the gospel according to Brave New World. And it's really interesting how we're willing to become uh, subjects to whoever can quote guarantee that to us, right? That level of stability in the world. And there's like so many good quotes out of it. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there was one that it pulled. And so there was a certain character in here. So the whole world is perfect, and everyone's genetically engineered, and they're making babies and test tubes and all of this kind of thing and growing them in a farm. But you have reservations where people, everything is just kind of, they call them like the savages, right? And the people are out here, and there was this one character that so somebody deviated from society, slept with one of the savages for the most part, who was actually part of the society at one point. And so there's this guy, and his name's John, and he gets brought into this whole world, and he's like, this place sucks. He really cannot stand this world. And when he's going through it, he misses everything that we take. And I think this is one of the quotes from it. But I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. Right? This is all the things that
Wow.
people gave up. And yeah, so you got to read it. I expect that report later on. But yeah, phenomenal book. Sorry, Dr. Piasecki. Feel free to build on it. It's just so incredible. The
Yeah,
parallels to today.
it really is. It's a great book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look at it then.
Reading assignments.
I know, literally. Man, well, Kelly, did you have anything else or
I mean that was great. That was a great way to end it.
yeah.
I mean, he was having way more fun than us. I don't even know what the Brave New World is. I'm just like, okay, I'll take your word for it. But yeah,
It's
yeah.
I can see that quote becoming eerily true though. It's like if everything becomes so programmable and it's all just through the AI and whatnot, like you said, with the emails all looking the same. And you said you almost can erode the cultures. It's like you don't want to lose that. I
Yeah,
want the cultures. I want the uniqueness. So that is kind of cool.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all we had. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know it was a little longer than expected, so I do apologize for that. I hope you were bearing with us. Um,
I thoroughly enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
yes, and thank you for coming on. Last thing, is there anything somewhere you want people to find you? I know you have some books. Did you want to plug anything like that?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there, and I have two textbooks that came out last year. One on the U.S. and Mexico with two fabulous co-authors, and then Leadership for the Now with a co-author, Catherine Rimshaw. So, yeah, connect. I would love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, again, as always, guys, thank you for watching. If you want to see more guests like this, or maybe even possibly see Dr. Piasecki back, please subscribe and we can see you in the next podcast and video.
Yeah. Hey, Isaac, please bring her back.
We
We'll talk
gotta
about
talk
Brave
about
New
some of
World.
the films and the other books. Yes,
Yeah,
for
there's a lot
sure.
we can talk about. So
Yes.
y'all
Yeah.
subscribe so you can see part two.
I was really sad because usually we have like a good way to end it. He just made the ending. You know how every time we have a nice
Oh
way
yeah.
to end it? And he just made I was like, somebody always has to do something like in the end.
There we go. All right, later, y'all.